Hello everyone, welcome to Audio Chewers. In today's class, I'm going to start the next chapter, that is carbon and its compounds. And in today's video, we are going to cover the introduction part and the chemical bonding part of the chapter. Welcome. Let's begin with the thought which says that achieving starts with believing. So start believing in your abilities to achieve whatever your goals are. Okay. Let's begin the chapter. So whenever we talk about carbon and its compounds, first thing it comes that why is carbon so important to us? So what is the basic importance of carbon? So when we talk about this, the first point is that carbon is widely distributed in the nature. It is found in free state as well as in compound form with the other things. Correct? So when we talk about earth crust, so it is only present in 0.02% as minerals. And when we talk about the atmosphere part, it is only present as 0.03% as carbon dioxide and a very less amount as a carbon monoxide and some other things. So what makes the carbon so important is this question. So what makes the carbon so important is this, that it is basically the one which makes the living organisms. Okay. So life would be impossible if there would have not been the carbon atom and the compounds which are derived from the carbon atom. Fine. So it is very essential for the life or the living organisms. We are mostly having the carbon in its compounds. Second thing, that when we think about the carbon and the compounds which are formed from it, there are millions of compounds which are formed from carbon. Fine, that makes it so important to study. The next thing is carbon compounds are basically what? They are mostly the compounds of carbon and hydrogen, which we call as hydrocarbons, and their derivatives. Fine. The next thing is the carbon is the main element in the organic compound. So whenever we study the organic compounds, it is basically the study of carbon and its compounds. Fine. And that's why the carbon is so important. Now, okay, the few more properties which makes the carbon so important is that carbon has this special ability that the carbon atoms can link with or can join with each other in n number. That means this carbon has special property that it can join with the other carbon atoms to form n number of or a very long chain. It can form chain, it can form ring compounds. So carbon can join with the other carbon atoms in n number, and that's what makes the so many that is basically the property which is responsible that the carbon can make millions of compounds, and this special property is called as catenation. You would have definitely studied about this property earlier, but just to understand that why is carbon so important. So this is the property which makes the carbon so important, that it enables it to make millions of compounds. Fine. Okay. Now we have to understand that as the carbon can join with each other, as you're aware, the atomic number of carbon is 6. That means it is having the 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. So those 6, out of those 6 electrons, if we see the electronic configuration, it becomes 2 and 4. So it has 4 valence electrons, and those 4 valence electrons join with the other carbon atoms, and they form a very long chains, different types of rings, linking linear polymers, cross-linked polymers. Definitely you would have studied about that earlier. So there are so many chains and different compounds which are formed because of this property. And if you see the simple examples which are found in our living organisms, there are so many complex compounds which are formed. The one can be chlorophyll, which is C55, H72, O5, N4, Mg. And the second example we can take is vitamin D, which is comparatively less complex. When we talk about our DNA, our RNA, the proteins, so many different molecules in our bodies are basically the carbon compounds. Fine. Okay, moving on further, when we talk about that carbon atoms join with each other, or they bond with each other to form the linear polymers or the cross-linked polymers or the ring compound or different types of compound. So what this basically chemical bond is, okay, that we need to understand first. So what is a chemical bond? Or either you are talking about the carbon compounds, or we talk about any other type of compounds. Basically, the chemical bonds are involved in forming the different compounds, or even the molecules of elements as well. So what is this chemical bond? This chemical bond is basically the attractive forces which hold the different constituents together in a chemical species. Now here the chemical species can be an ion. But when we talk about the formation of compounds, जब हम compounds के formation की बात करते हैं या फिर ions के formation की बात करते हैं, so we need to understand कि एक compound के अंदर अलग अलग atoms को hold करके क्या चीज़ रखती है. That is basically the chemical bond. And that is nothing else but the force of attraction between those two or more molecules or atoms. Remember, here it can be the atoms, here it can be the molecules, like when we talk about the polyatomic ions. It can be the ions, it can be molecules, but they are held together to form one compound by these chemical bonds. Fine. So this chemical bond is nothing but the force of attraction which keeps the different elements or species together. Fine. एक compound की formation में जो चीज़ें उसको एक साथ रखती है, basically that is what the chemical bond is. Now this chemical bond can be of different types. Fine. Now the simple one which you have studied in the previous chapter is the ionic bond. As you are aware, what this ionic bond is? When we talk about ionic bond is formed when there is a complete transfer of electrons from one type of atom to the another one. Okay, so here what is involved in the ionic bond? The transfer of electrons takes place. It can be one electron, it can be more than one electrons. तो जब एक atom इलेक्ट्रॉन देता है और दूसरा रिसीव करता है, तो आपको पता है दे एक्वायर्ड चार्जेस. तो जो देता है दैट बिकम्स पॉजिटिवली चार्ज आयन. आपको पता है नाउ व्हाई इट बिकम्स पॉजिटिवली चार्ज, बिकॉज उसके जो नेगेटिवली चार्ज कंपोनेंट है दैट इज इलेक्ट्रॉन, वो नंबर में घट जाते हैं, और जो पॉजिटिवली चार्ज प्रोटॉन्स है न्यूक्लियस के अंदर, बिकॉज हमने इलेक्ट्रॉन को रिमूव किया है, प्रोटॉन को नहीं किया है, सो प्रोटॉन का पॉजिटिव चार्ज जो है वो बढ़ जाता है, एंड दैट्स हाउ इट गेन्स पॉजिटिव चार्ज. एंड जिसने इलेक्ट्रॉन लिया है उसके ऑलरेडी जो नेगेटिव चार्ज इलेक्ट्रॉन्स थे उसमें एक और एडिशन हो गया है, सो दे एक्वायर द नेगेटिव चार्ज. ध्यान रखिएगा. ओके, सो पॉजिटिवली चार्ज जिसने इलेक्ट्रॉन दे दिया है, इट एक्वायर्स पॉजिटिव चार्ज, that is called as cation. Okay, because they form ions. Ions means the charged particles. Okay, जब भी कोई एटम या ग्रुप ऑफ एटम इलेक्ट्रॉन्स को दे देता है या ले लेता है, दैट बिकम्स आयन. इट कैन बी मोनोएटॉमिक, इट कैन बी पॉलीएटॉमिक. जैसे हाइड्रोजन आयन H+, दैट इज सिंगल एटम. OH-, दैट इज मोर देन वन एटम. ओके, सो दैट इज polyatomic ion. Okay, so you can understand here that whenever there is a transfer of electron, एक कोई दे रहा है इलेक्ट्रॉन, दूसरा ले रहा है, द बोथ विल फॉर्म आयंस. एंड आयंस के फॉर्मेशन से उनमें क्या होगा, बिकॉज आपको पता है ऑपोजिट चार्जेस अट्रैक्ट. तो यहाँ पर जिसने दिया है वो पॉजिटिव चार्ज हो गया, जिसने लिया है नेगेटिवली चार्ज आयन हो गया, और इन दोनों में जो फोर्स ऑफ अट्रैक्शन है, बिकॉज दीज आर ऑपोजिटली चार्ज आयंस, वो फोर्स ऑफ अट्रैक्शन ही बेसिकली बॉन्ड है. ओके, एंड दैट इज कॉल्ड एज आयोनिक बॉन्ड. हम इसको आयोनिक बॉन्ड क्यों कह रहे हैं? बिकॉज आयंस आर फॉर्म्ड, आयंस हैव बीन फॉर्म्ड ड्यूरिंग द ट्रांसफर ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉन. फाइन, एंड यू आर अवेयर दैट, always remember that here whenever the bonding is getting bonding is involved, basically it is the valence electrons which are involved in the bonding. It is not the inner shell electrons does not take part. For example, you have the sodium, that is atomic number 11, 2, 8 and 1. So you can understand here that the 2 which is in the first orbit 2 electrons, second orbit 8 electrons, and the third orbit has 1 electron. So here this 1 electron is mostly taking part, not mostly, in fact in all the times, it is the one which is taking part in the formation of bonds. This 1 electron will be given away to receive the stable configuration. So this we have to understand, that always the valence electrons which are present in the outermost shell of the atoms take part in the bonding. Fine. So whenever we talk about this formation of ionic bond, we can take example of NaCl. Okay, Na has 1 extra, 281, and the chlorine has 287. So this chlorine want to receive 1 electron, Na wants to give away, the Na gives away, sodium gives away 1 electron, Cl receives it, and the Na acquires the positive charge and Cl acquires the negatively charged. So this is sodium ion and chloride ion. So sodium and chloride ion will be held together by the electrostatic force of attraction, okay, and that will be formed as a compound. Fine. Here they exist as a, we will be discussing further their properties. Okay, now moving on to the second type of chemical bonding which is found is the covalent bonding. See, there are so many different types of bonding. Here I am mostly taking these two types. There are hydrogen bonding, coordinate bonding, metallic bond. There are several different types of bonds involved. Okay, but basically first we need to understand these two and later we can talk about others. So what happens in this chemical bond? Chemical bonding में क्या होता है? Here the transfer of electrons is not possible basically most of the time. So what happens? The mutual sharing of electrons takes place. For example, we can take example of carbon. Okay, because we will be studying in more detail further. Okay, so here we can talk about the carbon, that whenever we talk about carbon, you can understand the carbon's atomic number is 6. That means it is having 2 and 4. So 2 in the inner orbit and 4 in the outermost orbit. Now those 4 electrons are not making the octet complete. Fine. To receive or to gain stability, it needs the 8 electrons in the outermost orbit, but it is still having the 4. So it needs 4 extra or the 4 electrons to gain stability, but that is not possible. It cannot pull away the 4 electrons from some other different atoms. It cannot hold them together, and it cannot give away also. So what it do? It shares. Okay, it is like sharing कि हमारे पास ये चीज़ है, something it is too costly or not so easily available in the market, so let's share it. So वैसा हो जाता है in the covalent bonding. Electrons का sharing हो जाता है, तो इससे जो भी bond formation करेगा, for example here it is forming bond with the hydrogen atom. So hydrogen को लगता है कि ये electron carbon वाला मेरे पास है, carbon को लगता है hydrogen का मेरे पास है. So like that they share the electrons and they form a compound. So in covalent bonding, sharing of electrons is involved between the atoms of the same or different elements. Fine. Now we can differentiate between the ionic and covalent for the better understanding. How? Because if you will understand this difference, then it will be very easy to understand the covalent bonding and compounds further. So when we talk about ionic compounds, you are aware that they are formed by transfer of electrons. Here you are aware covalent compounds are formed by sharing of electrons between the atoms of same element or different element. Fine. You hear the components or the parts of a compound are held together by electrostatic force of attraction. Here you are aware that and when we talk about electrostatic force of attraction, it is quite strong force of attraction. So you would have seen that mostly the compounds which are forming by ionic compounds are solids, and they have very high melting and boiling point, because this force of attraction which is holding them together is quite strong. Whereas when we talk about covalent bonds, they have a weak intermolecular forces. Remember, we are talking about intermolecular forces. They have a weak intermolecular forces, and that is the reason that the compounds which are formed by covalent bondings are mostly liquid or gas, and they have comparatively low melting and boiling points. Now, the next thing we can say is that they ionize in their solution. Ionic compounds, they exist as ions. Okay, like Na plus ion and Cl minus. When the sodium chloride, the salt, common salt which we use in the kitchen, if it is dissolved in the water, it will form sodium ion, Na plus ion and chloride ions. So they ionize in their solution. Whereas when we talk about covalent compound, they do not ionize in their solution. That means they will not form ions. And when they will not form ions, and when the ions will not be available in the solution, that means the solutions of covalent compounds do not conduct electric current. Okay, so we need to understand them. Okay, these are not, ions are not formed in the solution, and that's why they do not conduct electric current. Here, because ions are formed in the solution, that's why they conduct electric current. So that is a very basic and the topics or the differences which you need to understand better this chapter. I have taken them only. There will be further more differences which we can study some other time. Now the next thing we need to understand is that how different elements attain stability. Correct? We have been talking about this in the previous slides also, that the atoms needs to attain the stable configuration, and they can attain stable configuration by completing their octet. Octet means the outermost shell should have the 8 electrons. That is octet rule says. If some atom acquires or have the 8 electrons in the outermost shell, it will have the stability, and it will not react easily with any other compound, any other atom to form different compounds. Fine. So this is very important, that they want to complete their octet for their stability. Now the next thing is that how they can do this. Either they can gain some electron or they can lose some electron. Like when we talk about sodium. So we said that sodium has 2, 8, 1, and sodium gave away 1 electron, and chlorine, which had 2, it's 7. So it received 1 electron to attain its stability. Fine. So that can be done either by giving away the electron or receiving the electron. Fine. And second, as I have shared with you, that inertial electrons do not take part in bonding. Fine. Now, how does carbon attain stability? As we said that electrons can be taken or electrons can be given away, but carbon, you are aware, that has 4 electrons in its outermost shell. Now, how will it attain stability? Correct? So and that is noble gas configuration, which we also call as. So carbon can have these 2 options, that either it can give away 4 electrons, but it will not be possible because its nucleus, you are aware that nucleus has positive charge because protons are there in the nucleus. So it holds the negatively charged particles with it. But its nucleus is not so strong to hold 4 extra electrons from outside. Correct? And if it gives away 4 electron, that will also be not possible for any other atom to pull the 4 electrons out of it. Correct? So these 2 options are not possible, and that is the reason the carbon forms sharing. So this carbon atom attains stability by sharing its valence electrons with the atoms of carbon or with other elements. Okay, and other molecules which are sharing the electrons with can be hydrogen atom, can be any other atoms also. Fine. And we have seen in the nature that it is not only which is carbon atom which is forming the covalent bond. That means the sharing of electron is taking place. There are so many species, so many compounds, molecules of different elements. They also form covalent bond for attaining stability. Fine. The simple example which you can take is the hydrogen molecule. When we talk about hydrogen molecule, that means H2. Hydrogen has atomic number 1. That means it has 1 electron. Now it attains stability by joining with the 1 more hydrogen atom. So we can say that these 2 hydrogen atoms, they join with each other and they form this hydrogen molecule. Here you can see this X, I have denoted the 1 electron. The another X denotes the second electron of this hydrogen atom, this atom, and 1 electron of this, and there is a sharing of electrons. And when they have now here, as they will be having 2 electrons in the first orbit, so it is like a stable configuration for them, and the hydrogen molecule is a quite stable molecule. Fine. This is the way different elements attain stability. Okay, and that's it for today. We'll be continuing this chapter in the next coming videos. This was a basic introduction part. Thank you for watching EduAchievers. If you like the videos, hit the like button. If you like it, you can share it with your friends as well, because I will be making such videos continuously. Okay, and if you have any other problem in understanding the content which I have discussed with you today, please share it with me in the comment box. I can try to make more explain that in the next coming video. Thank you for watching EduAchievers.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.